Hey guys. Okay, so we're going to pretty much be doing what we did yesterday. Just more practice of it. Okay. It's asking me to find the rate of change and write the linear equation. Well, in order to write a linear equation, we need slope, rate of change, and we also need the y-intercept. Okay, so first let's find our rate of change, and I want you to go ahead and write slope above that, and then also write the letter m. Those all mean the same thing, slope, m, rate of change, right? You can see it any of those ways. Okay, so I know on a graph we have to find two easy points. Well, lucky us. Point 1, point 2, it gave us two easy points already. So with our 2 points, we turn it into a triangle. And we have to find our rise and our run. Notice that these are not numbered, so we can assume that each space means 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's count how many it rises. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. And let's count how much it runs. Well, it runs 1, 2 boxes. So remember, it's rise over run. So it rose 4, it ran 2. Okay, remember, anytime we do slope on a graph, we have to pay attention to the direction the line is going in, from the left to the right. So as I go from the left to the right, notice that it's going up, which means my slope has to be a positive. So I'm going to go ahead and stick a positive out here. And let's simplify. 4 divided by 2, that's going to give me a positive 2. So I know my slope, I know my m is 2. Okay, so that's part of it. We have our m, we have our slope. Now all we need is our y-intercept. So remember, you look at where it crosses the y-axis. Well, it crosses the y-axis here. That's your y-intercept. And notice it crosses the y-axis. You always start from the origin, which is here. And it's down 1, 2, 3. Down 3 would be a negative 3. Okay, so now we have everything we need to write our equation, because remember, it's y equals mx plus b. So let's write that down. We know that our m, our slope, is 2. We know our b, our y-intercept, is negative 3, so we have everything. Y equals 2x, and since b is a negative, I'm just going to write minus 3. So my slope is 2, my y-intercept is negative 3. Okay, same idea on this next graph. We need to find the rate of change, which is slope, so let's write it again, which is the letter m. So remember, slope, m, rate of change, all the same thing. Okay, so in order to find slope of a graph, we pick 2 easy points. Lucky us, there are already 2 easy points selected for us. So we're going to turn it into a triangle. And we have to do rise over run. So let's count. Notice since there are no numbers, we're assuming each box is 1. So let's count. It rises 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. And it runs 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. So rise, it rose 4. Over run, it ran 4. Okay, we can't forget, this is super important to pay attention to which direction the line goes as you read it from left to right. Well, as I go from the left to the right, this line is going down, which means my slope has to be a negative. So I'm going to stick a negative out there. So let's simplify. Negative 4 divided by 4 simplifies to negative 1. So we found slope. So to write a linear equation, it's y equals mx plus b. Well, we know that m is negative 1, but we still need to find b. Remember, that's your y-intercept, so you have to look at where does it cross the y-axis. I'll use a different color so it doesn't get confusing. I see that it crosses the y-axis right here. So we have to figure out where is this located. You see how it's touching the y-axis? Well, remember, we always start counting from the origin, and from the origin it's up 1, 2, 3. Up 3 would be a positive 3. So we do know our slope, we do know our b, our y-intercept. Now we have everything we need to write our equation. So y equals, our m was negative 1, x, our b was a positive 3, so I put plus 3. Okay, if you want to leave your equation like that, you can. But remember, negative 1x can also be just written as negative x. So this is the most simplified way you can write it. If you want to leave it as negative 1x, that's fine by me, but just remember that negative 1x is exactly the same as negative x. Okay, so recap. To find rate of change, slope, m, from a graph, you have to pick 2 good points, find out how much does it rise, how much does it run. Rise over run, simplify it. You also have to pay attention to which direction does it go as you read it from left to right. If it goes down, it's negative, and if it goes up, it will be positive. So that's how you find slope. To find your y-intercept, remember you find where does it cross the y-axis. Once you know where it crosses the y-axis, you always count from the origin. All right, so now we don't have a graph, we have a table. Don't forget this guy right here. Just means y. Okay, so whenever we are given a table, we're going to need to find out how it's changing in our x's and our y's. So notice your x's go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So I know it's getting bigger, so we're going to be adding. And how much do we add to get from 1 to 2? We add 1. All right, let's look at our y's. Notice your y's are going from 6, 12, 18, 24. So the y's are getting bigger, which means we're adding. And we have to add 6 to 6 to get to 12. 6 plus 6 gives us 12. Okay, so remember, it's the change in y's over the change in x's. Y's rise. So these are talking about my y's, a positive 6. My x's was a positive 1. 6 divided by 1 is 6. So that's our m, that's our slope, that's our rate of change. Okay, so to write our linear equation, it's y equals mx plus b. We already know the m, we know the slope is 6. We just found that. Our b is our y-intercept. Remember, on a table, your y-intercept is where x is 0. Well, notice we don't have where x is 0. So we're going to create our own. We need to figure out what will that be. So I know as I go forward, it's adding 6 every time. Well, I have to go backwards 1 to get to 0. So I have to do the opposite. So instead of adding 6 each time, I'm going to have to go subtract 6. 6 minus 6 gives me 0. So I know our y-intercept will be 0. Notice, y is 0 when x is 0. So now we know m, we know our slope, and we know b, we know our y-intercept is 0, so we can write our equation. Y equals m is 6, x, our b is 0. I wouldn't count you wrong if you leave your equation written like that, but it's really unnecessary to keep a plus 0. So my final, most simplified answer I can write is y equals 6x. All right, excuse me. So remember, this guy means y. F of x is y. So these are your x's, these are your y's. Okay, so we find a rate of change. We need to do the change in y's over the change in x's. Okay, so if I look at my x's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I notice they're getting bigger. So bigger means adding, and I have to add 1 to 1 to get to 2, so it's adding 1. Okay, now look at your y's. Notice it's going from negative 1 to 3 to 5. Okay, those are also getting bigger, so we're adding. And to get from -1 to 1, I have to add 2. To get from 1 to 3, I have to add 2. So it's the change of y's, which is 2, so positive 2 on top, over the change in x's, which is a positive 1. We simplify. 2 over 1 is 2. This is your m. This is your slope, your rate of change. So to find our linear equation, we need y equals mx plus b. Well, we know the m is 2 now. We just found that. Our b is our y-intercept. Remember, in a table, you look for where x is 1. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. X is 0, which we don't have. So we're going to have to go figure that out. We have to go backwards 1, right? So when I'm going forward, I know we're adding 2 each time. So to go backwards, I'm going to have to subtract 2. So -1 subtract 2. -1 subtract 2 is a -3. This represents my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is a -3. So now I know my m, I know my b, I know my y-intercept, so I can write the equation. Y equals m we said is 2, x, our b, our y-intercept is a -3, so I'm going to write -3. Word problems. It says Ashley decided to save a portion of her paycheck each month. When she started saving, she had $100. After 4 months, she had $200, and after 8 months, she had $300. Okay, so it's a word problem, so let's do cubes. Let's circle the key numbers. I know she started with 100. I know at 4 months, she had 200. At 8 months, she had 300. Let's underline the question. Well, let's skip that part because they're separated with A, B, C, and D. Let's box any math words. I don't see any math words. E, eliminate any unnecessary information, which we need everything here. So let's get into solving it. All right, so at time 0, so this is our starting point. Remember, this represents our y-intercept. So I know she started with $100. So after 4 months, it tells us, after 4 months, she had $200. And after 8 months, she had $300. So remember, it's always your x and your y. This is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. So we know x stands for time, so let's go ahead and put time down here. And then our y is talking about savings, which is money, so I'm going to put a money symbol on this side. Okay, we have to pick a good scale to go by. Well, my months is 0, 4, 8. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and count by 2s because I have room to get from 0 to 8 if I count by 2s. My y's, they're going by 100, 200, 300. So I think a good increment would be going by 50s because I would have room to get to 300 if I count by 50. You could have counted by 100, but it would have squished my graph some, and I want to not have it look so squished. Okay, so let's plot our points. 0, time, $100 in savings. So at time 0, she has $100. Notice that's our starting point, and also look that it's on top of the y-axis. That's my y-intercept. I know at 4 months, she has $200. So at time of 4 months, she has $200. And finally, at 8 months, she has $300. So go to time of 8 months, she has $300. And as more time goes, she's going to just keep getting more money. So that's why I put that arrow. All right, it's asking for the rate of change, which remember it's the change in y's when we were going from a table over the change in an x's. Okay, so notice as I go 0, 4, 8, it's increasing, so it's adding. I had to add 4. 0 plus 4 gives me the 4. Look at your y's, 100, 200, 300, that's increasing, so I know I'm adding 100. So you put your change in y's first, that's 100. Positive 100 over your x's, which was a positive 4. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So remember, that's your rate of change, that's your m, that's your slope. Okay, initial value, guys. Initial value, that's your y-intercept. That's your starting point, okay? So another word for your initial value is your starting point. Initial means starting. So we can look at our table. I know that's when x is 0, and it tells me that she started at $100. So I know my initial value is 100, and it represents Ashley had $100 at the start. Okay, now it wants me to write the equation. So remember y equals mx plus b. It's telling me to let savings be s, which was my y. And we want x to be t. So s equals, because notice up here, that's why s and t. X is time, savings is y. So we said savings is y, my x is my time. Okay, so s equals, we already found out that m was 25. We're going to let x be t for time. And we found out that our y-intercept is a 100, positive 100. It started at 100. Okay, so for our domain is x, and in this case they use a t, which stood for time. And remember, time, you can have a part of a month. You can have 1.3 months. So I'm not going to list it. I have to write my inequality. So I'm going to write down t for time. The lowest amount of time it can be is 0, and she can keep saving forever. So time starts at 0, and it can keep going forever, and the time is just going to keep getting greater than or equal to 0. So range is y. They used an s in this case, which was her money, her savings. Well, her savings can keep building up the longer that she saves for, but the lowest is going to be what she had to begin with. So her savings and 100, she's starting at 100. Well, her savings can just keep getting larger, so I'm going to put greater than or equal to 100. Because it starts at 100, but it's going to keep getting greater the longer that she saves. All right, bye guys.